In the previous video, we have looked at different data types. We have looked at strings, we have looked at numbers, we have looked at arrays, and so on. In this video, we are going to look at objects. We are going to consider objects in the next few videos. So objects are similar to arrays. They are also used for organizing and storing data. Objects are fundamental data structures used to represent complex entities. So sometimes in our program we have complex data to store or to deal with in our program, and in order to represent the complex data correctly, we need a more we need a better data structure to represent the data, right? So that's where objects come in. So objects are similar to arrays in the sense that they store multiple values. So if you are dealing with a variable can only contain one value. So if you have something like let first name is equal to Lawrence, you can only store one first name here, so you can't have more than one first name. So if you want to store another first name, you have to override this. So if I say first name is equal to Jacob, like this, then that means I've overwritten the Lawrence. So what I had here as Lawrence will be overwritten, and if I print this out, you see I have Jacob, I don't have Lawrence anymore, right? So that's how this works. So when you're dealing with variables, you deal with just one value. When you deal with arrays, you can store multiple values. So array gives you that structure where you can store multiple values. So in this case, I can have first names instead of first name, and I can store as many values as I can. So here I have Lawrence, I have Jacob, and let's say Isaac. And if I print my first names, you can see we have multiple values here, right? So objects are similar to arrays. They also store multiple values, but in a more structured way. We are going to be looking at that shortly. So they represent complex entities. Now let's say you want to store names of persons in a class. Let's say we have a class of students and we want to store their names. Let's just pick a particular student to store the student's name. So to store the student's, not just the name, in this case we want to store the student's details. So we have the student first name, we have last name, we have age, we have email. Okay, so let's say we have these 4 details of a student that we want to store. If we want to use array, we can do something like this. Let details, so the first name could be Lawrence, last name could be the Adu, age could be let's say 11, and email could be something, right? So using this approach, it means I must know the index. I must always know the index of each of these records. If I want to get the first name, I must know the index of the first name, which is 0 in this case. If I want to know the last name, if I want to get the last name, I must know the index where the last name is. located, right? So this is good, but it's not good enough. So if you are dealing with very complex data, you may run into problems with this method, right? So it's not flexible. It's not flexible enough, right? So this kind of data, we have a better way to represent it, and that's where objects come in. So to store this data, we can have something like this: details. So this is an object. This is a structure of an object, and inside the object, we are going to store the values. So we will first have the key. So when you want to create an object, we deal with the keys and values. So a key is a property name. So this is a property of this object. So I can even call the student like this. So student is an object, and these are the properties of this object. So the key here is a property name. So first name. So I can have first name like this, a column, and then the value. So the value in this case is Lawrence, and last name is another key or property name, and what we had up there, and age the same. We can have this as a number, and email can be something as well, right? So this is the structure of an object, and looking at this is the structure here is better, it's clearer what we are dealing with. Someone looking at this data will easily understand what this data represents, right? So if you just look at this array like this, you'll be wondering, okay, we just have Lawrence, we have Adu, we have 11, we have something. What does this data represent? What is this data talking about, right? So but looking at this data here, you know that this is referring to somebody. So we have first name. You know that, okay, Lawrence is the first name, but it's not clear what Lawrence is here. The same thing with this. So this is last name, this is age, this is email. So this is a better way to structure this data. And arrays are useful as well. So we have scenarios where you have to use arrays, and we have scenarios where we have to use objects, right? So don't think arrays are useless. We just treated it, and then we are saying something else is better now, right? So the two are useful. Arrays are useful, objects are useful as well. So there are scenarios where you are going to use arrays will serve you better, and there are scenarios where objects will serve you better. So and then there are cases where you have to combine the two. So you have to combine arrays and objects to be able to perform whatever you want to do in your program, right? So this is an object, and this is how you can represent an object. So they allow you to store and organize data in a structured way. So you can see the structure in this case. So we have a structure. Anybody looking at this object, we know that this is a structure. We have first name, last name, age, email. So this is this have a better structure than arrays. And they are key value pairs. So when we talk about key value pairs, we are talking about the property name and the value. So this is a key and this is a value. This is a key, this is a value, this is a key, this is a value, this is a key, and this is a value. So that's why we say they are a key value pair. So we have in each entry, this is an entry. So in each entry, we have a key and a value. So later we're going to see how we can access this data, each of these properties on this object, and we can see that it's more flexible to if you have this kind of data. I don't want to say it's more flexible to access data in objects, right? Because like I mentioned before, there are scenarios where you have to use arrays. So I don't want to make it sound like objects are better than arrays. There are scenarios where you have to use objects, and there are scenarios where you have to use arrays. So we are going to see how we can easily access each of these properties in this object easily. So it's easier to access using objects than using arrays. So we're going to see that in our next video.